Funding for Avery Talks About Stuff was made possible in part by the YouTube AdSense program and by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.
In October of 2011, Adam Horowitz, co-creator and executive producer of the ABC show Once Upon a Time, said this about adapting Snow White for the show's pilot episode. Snow White is ground zero for fairy tales. It was the first movie I saw as a kid, and I remember being terrified of seeing the evil queen. I've got twin daughters who are 2.5 years old, and I don't even remember showing them anything, but they know Snow White. It's amazing, when I was watching dailies for the pilot, they would see the stuff of Snow White's actress in the coffin and start going, "Snow White is sleeping." And I was like, how do you know who she is already? I think it's just something in our DNA. Because of that, everybody loves the character and loves the story so much that it's going to continually be told in new and different ways. It's true, Snow White is one of those stories that's ingrained in pop culture. It's something that everyone seems to have heard of somewhere, even if you can't remember where you first heard it from. But recently there's been a lot of buzz about Snow White due to Disney's live-action remake being dubbed by seemingly every corner of the internet the worst of the worst. I was thinking the other day about how politicized the conversation around this movie has gotten, because of course this movie was politicized. We can't have anything nice. From all sides it was, before the movie had even made it out of pre-production. And I wish that we could all just hate it for the bad film that it is. But then I realized that this debate around Snow White has been swirling around my entire life. Is it empowering to women? Is it degrading to women? This led me down a rabbit hole of history and storytelling, and now I have to share it with somebody, so I'm here to take you down the path with me. Come with me.
Wanna know a secret? Promise not to tell. We are standing there, wishing well.
Like most people, my first memories of fairy tales often stem from the Disney animated versions, which we'll get to in a little bit. Snow White was never my favorite movie. That was Beauty and the Beast, and I will take no objections. But I did like Snow White a lot, and I watched the VHS copy we had countless times. I think I started wearing it out. I used to get told as a kid that I kind of looked like Snow White, but that's just a nicer way to call me pale than to say that I look like Goob from Meet the Robinsons, which my mother reminds me of every time I'm tired because it's tragically true. After all, Snow White allegedly gets her name from her fair skin, but what does the original text actually say about her? I mean, I was also told that she was 14 years old as a kid, which is a rumor I can't substantiate with any of my research. There's no version I found that actually states that. It's just a needlessly concerning thing to make up. I wanted to find the earliest version of Snow White that I could and go from there to start my whole research process. It's hard to say how old Snow White is. As with most fables, the story was told and passed down orally for probably centuries, and it was a little different in each region, before the brothers Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm collected it among other German folk tales and published a written version in the 1812 book Household Tales by the Brothers Grimm. This is where the majority of the fairy tales you were told come from, but they're a lot different than you were told as a kid. They're really violent. I'll be using the Grimm version as a jumping off point, but just know it wasn't the first, as there was a version published in 1782. That's from the evil stepmother's perspective, and in 1809 there was even a Snow White play. 3 whole years before the Brothers Grimm would even be published, there was a play adaptation of Snow White. I don't think I need to tell anybody the summary of Snow White, right? Pretty girl has bitchy stepmother, and stepmother tries to have her killed, so the girl runs away to live with 7 dwarves in the woods, and eventually falls in love with a prince, gets poisoned by an apple, wakes up after true love's kiss and lives happily ever after her homeboys kill her evil stepmother. Shit, you have heard it before. Anyway, reading through a copy of the original version translated into English, I noticed that it doesn't describe Snow White's appearance in the way that a lot of people think, or quote. I forgot my drink and now I'm losing my voice, don't mind me. Okay, so a lot of people seem to be obsessed with Snow White actually being white. And here's the thing, most sources say that she's described as having skin white as snow, lips red as blood, hair black as ebony. But that's not really what it says. Let's read together. Once upon a time, in midwinter, when the snowflakes were falling like feathers from heaven, a queen sat sewing at her window, which had a frame of black ebony wood. As she sewed, she looked up at the snow and pricked her finger with her needle. 3 drops of blood fell into the snow. The red on the white looked so beautiful that she thought to herself, if only I had a child as white as snow, as red as blood, as black as the wood in this frame. Soon afterward, she had a little daughter who was as white as snow, as red as blood, and as black as ebony wood, and therefore they called her Little Snow White. And as soon as the child was born, the queen died. Kind of a bummer there at the end. Sorry, Queenie. Okay, here's the other thing. I went looking for like an academic breakdown of what this means, and no one can seem to agree on what this means. It's partially because there's a chance of poor translation from the original German that may have distorted its meaning as a kind of colloquialism of its time, but there are a couple of theories that I could find. I will share those theories with you now. Some simply believe that it's not that deep, that it means to have fair skin, dark hair, and rosy cheeks. Or lips. That part's also up for debate. Towards the end of the story, they specify that her hair is ebony, but I read like 3 different translations, and they were all slightly different with how they worded even that part, so I don't know. This could simply be a reflection of arbitrary Germanic beauty standards of the period, but since we're lacking a direct correlation between the colors and what features are supposed to have them, and since Jake and Willie were detailed in their writing to say the least, I feel like the more satisfying answer leans toward it being more metaphorical than anything else. Some have pointed to white, red, and black representing the different phases of life, and this motif signifying that this is a young girl's coming-of-age story. You know, white representing the purity and innocence of childhood, red representing the vibrancy of adult life, and black representing death. That was the second theory I saw. The third theory is that this is a case of good old-fashioned religious imagery. I know, I'm just the messenger. Here's the thing, Grimm's writing is littered with Christian symbolism, which makes sense since this was Germany in the 1800s. And so it makes sense that this story wouldn't be an exception. White as snow is a common term in the Bible signifying innocence, and following this logic, red as blood would then signify being full of life, as in receiving the blood of Christ. One of my biggest memories from growing up in church was that we spent a lot of time thinking about, talking about, and pretending to drink blood. I am never beating the vampire allegations. Anyway, with ebony, some say that's a material that was considered extremely valuable and strong in certain verses of the Bible, so there's a couple of different things that could symbolize. That might be kind of a stretch theory, but I don't know, I'll leave it up to you. Is this theory cooking or just reliving religious trauma? All I know is any interpretation is better than whatever Ben Shapiro was on about.
We don't like the original values that a woman is reliant on a man. She's a girl boss who's going to be, fighting the witch on her own, and the prince is going to be standing off to the side, if there is a prince at all, and if she's not a transgender, non-binary Snow White.
Anyway, I'm walking away from this part of the video even more confused about Snow White's looks, but I also don't think it matters that much. I think the story is more symbolic in general. You know, it's a parable about inner beauty and its value, and, it's a moral teaching against vanity and selfishness. The queen is said to be green and yellow with envy, and later red and white imagery is used again to denote the poison apple, with the white side being safe to eat and the red side being poisonous. So this could just be a stupid debate surrounding very flowery language. After all, the Grimm brothers, they were just a couple of sassy German boys. I feel like if either one of them heard me say sassy German boys in reference to them, they would haunt me from beyond the grave. Also, before we move on from this section, I also want to point out that we don't know how old she is. They say she's prettier than the evil queen by age 7, but then there's at least 3 time jumps that happen between then and when she meets the prince. So let's stop telling people she's 14. It's like when people say Romeo was like 30 when Juliet was 14 years old, which I used to think at one point too. I read the Wishbone version of the book on my channel a few months back, and I also thought that that's what it said in the original text, but the original text never says how old Romeo is. For all we know, he's the same age as Juliet. Anyway, the prince in the OG book doesn't pass the vibe check, to be fair, when it comes to Snow White, but honestly, nothing about the original Grimm's fairy tales passes the vibe check. Oh, and I also found this silent film from 1916 that adapts Snow White, and it's straight up nightmare fuel. It starts off with Santa, and then there's all these horrific furry outfits. I'm getting Santa and the Ice Cream Bunny flashbacks. It scares me. Apparently Walt Disney saw this film when he was 15, and it's believed to have had an impact on his decision to animate Snow White 2 decades later. Now that that's all sorted, let's move on to the first animated Snow White.
Make a wish into the well. That's all you have to do.
Not that one.
A pen and ink. She can win you with a wing.
Snow White 1933 was produced by the Max Fleischer Company and predates Disney's Snow White by 4 years. It is a fever dream that lasts 7 minutes and also features a song by Cab Calloway, one of the greatest singers to ever live.
She's so sweet, so calm, so fair.
Walt Disney was, heavily inspired by the Fleischer cartoon. See, here's the tea. They hated each other, and Walt wouldn't let Max have anything. I really need to do a video about that whole situation. It's wild. But he went into his production of the retelling of Snow White less than a year after he saw the Betty Boop version that Fleischer had made. Walt Disney was so intent, in fact, on having a magic wand measuring contest with Max, that he reportedly poached one of Betty Boop's early animators to work out Snow White's signature look. Walt Disney was a petty bitch. I know, they had an infamous rap party for Disney Snow White back in the day, and it's this hilarious story of 1930s celebrity gossip that I told Gabe on an old episode of Pop Culture Curiosities. That's here on this channel if you'd like to hear more about a bunch of drunk animators at a luxury resort looking silly. But say what you will about Walt and Michael Mouse, Disney's animated Snow White is my personal favorite version. It's classic, beautiful, a perfect mix of innocence and terrifying imagery. Grumpy is a whole vibe and I love him. This was the first ever full-length animated feature that anyone had made, and it really shined due to the animators' hard work and creative decisions to capture that 1930s old Hollywood glamour, to kind of help the audience warm up to it as a film. Because animated films can be just as good as any other film. Animation is a beautiful art form, which, by the way, I would love to see more 2D animation make a resurgence. By the way, people try to ruin it by saying it's just propaganda for keeping women in the kitchen. And look. Walt Disney was not a progressive man, by any means. But if I was Snow White and I crashed the house of 7 strangers, I would also volunteer to cook and clean, not because I'm a woman, but because rent is expensive and we live in an economy. I think if your takeaway from Snow White is women be cooking and cleaning, you're misguided. Germany also remembered that it was their story first, and in 1955 they made another version. The most standout version of that one for me was this bear that looks like Smokey post-divorce. I also noticed that every movie pretty much discussed so far puts more of an emphasis on the romance plot than the last one to come before it. Not that that's bad, I just found it interesting. The original story doesn't really care about romance at all. I also found the older obscure films that I'm talking about now on YouTube, and the comment section of all of them are just littered with people talking about how all of these versions are, in their opinion, better than the new Snow White. But I won't jump ahead, we're gonna give new Snow White its time, believe me. Our first Snow White comedy comes in the form of Snow White and the Three Stooges in 1961. The most notable parts of this version are that the Three Stooges take the place of the 7 dwarves. They raise Prince Charming as a commoner who doesn't know he's the prince, a la Sleeping Beauty. The prince wears these unfortunate flesh-colored tights that make him look like he's just rocking it like Winnie the Pooh out here. And, oh yeah, there's Romani racism.
It's only our gypsy Matilda, dearie.
Roma people really just get sideswiped in the most random and bizarre ways, as far as like pop culture goes. Have you noticed this? Also, this movie has potentially my least favorite puppet I think I've ever seen, which is saying something coming from me.
It won't happen again, I'll see to that. Play.
Play!
Also, the prince doesn't really kiss Snow White awake, he just kind of asks her nicely and she wakes up.
Wait, my love. Please wait. Come back to me, Snow White. Come back, I beg you. It's a miracle.
Jumping ahead to the 1980s, I wanted to slow down and talk about this next one in detail. Shelley Duvall's Fairy Tale Theater. I feel like people who have been watching my channel for a long time just like gasped and I heard you through the camera lens.
Hello, I'm Shelley Duvall. Welcome to Fairy Tale Theater.
Fairy Tale Theater is a series that I've done several videos about on this channel, but it's been a while since I've talked about it, and I've received several requests. Fairy Tale Theater fans you guys are quite persistent, and I get it. I'm also a big fan of this show. I love this series. I miss Shelley Duvall. So I thought we'd do an old school watch through in the middle of this big project.
Tonight's show is adapted from the classic Brothers Grimm tale about a jealous queen whose vanity destroys her.
Yes, this is an unhinged way to format returning to the series, but go with me on this one.
Once upon a time, in a faraway land with graceful forests and towering mountains, there lived a beautiful young queen.
We start with the magic mirror, who is played here by Vincent Price, another favorite of mine.
One day, as she was sewing a birthday gift for her husband, she pricked her finger with the needle.
He belongs to the first queen, Snow White's biological mother, played by Shelley Duvall herself. I actually get a little bit teary thinking about it. I haven't talked about the show since she died.
Oh, how I wish I could have a child with lips of deep red. And skin white as snow.
Snow White's mother passes away.
Several months later, the young queen gave birth to a daughter, and everyone in the kingdom was very happy.
Snow White's mother passes away, and the mirror gets inherited by the evil queen, Snow White's stepmother.
But the new queen, while very beautiful indeed, did not have the goodness in her heart that Snow White's mother possessed.
And this makes him so delightfully shady towards her. I love it so much.
My skin could be satin.
The evil queen is played by Vanessa Redgrave, and Snow White is played by a very young Elizabeth McGovern.
I did not mean to disturb you, but look what the court jester taught me.
If you can hear the happiness in my voice, that's me regressing into my Downton Abbey fangirl phase.
With her beauty so rare, is by far the fairest of the fair.
An outrageous lie!
My queen, to accept the truth with the dignity and grace would be far more rewarding.
When the queen calls for the huntsman to kill Snow White, he couldn't be more sus about it.
Is there something you wish me to do? Or someone?
I can't remember any sins, God, and I can't think of any reason why I should die.
I love how Snow is like, I've literally never done anything wrong ever in my life.
You're far safer here in the woods than you would be back there with your stepmother.
The huntsman spares Snow White because a good soldier disobeys illegal orders. I said hopefully, as an American living in historically interesting times. And the queen crashes out when she's given a fake heart. Well, the heart is real, but it's like a boar's heart. You know what I mean. Snow runs into the woods and makes her way to the dwarves' cottage.
Cold soup.
Good soup.
The dwarves come home and are completely normal about this.
What happened to my soup? There's a bite missing from my meat. Some of my peas are missing.
Well, she did just break into their house. I don't really expect them to be super normal, but you know what I mean. It's...
My, what a lovely child.
Sir, this is a whole adult woman. What the...
You, my queen, are ever so fair. But even your beauty cannot compare with that of Snow White, who's alive and well.
Okay. The magic mirror is always super cunty, but this one takes the cake. I love him.
Her heart is in this box. You're lying again.
When the mirror tells a lie, it shatters in shame.
When the queen realizes that he didn't kill Snow White, the huntsman is so bad at lying.
Whose heart is in this box?
It is that of a boar, my lady.
She goes down to her creepy little dungeon so that she can change, while Snow White asks insane questions.
Why are you so small?
I'm small because I'm a dwarf.
We get this POV shot that makes me giggle.
Oh, you're welcome, princess.
You don't have to call me princess, you can just call me Snow White.
You don't have to call me princess, just call me by my government name.
Can I stay here?
Wait a minute. Why would I sleep?
Oh, I wouldn't take your bed, Bubba.
The dwarves leave Snow White and run into the prince on the way to work. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do.
Ribbons and laces, the sail, dearie. Silken ribbons.
Meanwhile, the queen is in disguise and starts pulling her bullshit.
Oh, it's a little too tight. I can't catch my breath.
Bring me a basket of fruit.
How's Samira gonna bring that bitch? He doesn't have hands.
She's dead.
After the first murder attempt of Snow White, the dwarves find her that night when they return home, and just like in the original story, they unwrap the ribbons around her neck and just Control-Alt-Delete her asphyxiation.
I think it's much more fun to live like you do all together.
Nah, it's still like my own bedroom.
This scene gives such cozy sleepover vibes. I hate when people try to make Snow White living with 7 men weird, like it isn't super innocent.
We don't swim.
Why not?
Dwarfs can't.
Have you tried?
No. Dwarfs can't.
But why?
We're too little. Fish would eat us.
I am using this excuse the next time someone tries to get me to the beach.
You, my queen, are ever so fair. But even your beauty cannot compare with that of Snow White, who's alive and well.
The queen learns that Snow White has pulled a Jesus and plans to poison her with the apple.
Today, your disgusting ruby red lips will bite into my beautiful ruby red apple.
Vanessa is so pretty even when they're trying to make her look super ugly. Does the prince have a job? Is he just sitting there filming Colleen Ballinger apology videos all day? I'm sorry.
Well, perhaps you'd like a grape.
Why, thank you.
And some company.
The queen in disguise starts harassing him.
No!
Yes.
No!
Yes.
Oh, I forgot!
But then remembers she's supposed to be ugly and runs away. Definitely the reason why you should second guess harassing somebody, not just because it's fucked.
I think I love Snow White.
She's my favorite big person.
Short people, go tell your tall friends this right now.
All right, my little snowdrop. Go ahead now, take a bite.
Snow gets poisoned and the dwarves put her in the glass coffin.
It's delicious.
We could never bury her. She is much too beautiful to be buried. She was the most beautiful princess in the land. But now she's dead.
You sure she's dead?
The prince is like, are y'all sure she's dead? Like, she looks pretty alive.
Her cheeks still have color and her skin a radiant glow.
Bitch, she's breathing. And then they drop the coffin, and she hawks up the apple and wakes up just like in the original story as well.
Must have been this poison apple. I knew it. The fruit woman. I knew it when I saw her. She was the evil queen.
Fairy tale theater tended to be very, like, true to the original, but also kind of a parody. It was very fun. I love that show.
I cannot imagine anyone ever hurting you. You should only be loved. And I am filled with love for you.
Anyway, the prince, who's a sweet himbo, immediately asks her to marry him.
I cannot imagine life without you. Will you be my wife?
Yes.
Doesn't even help her out of the coffin first. When did this light go off? Alexa, turn on the library lamp. Thanks, wiretap.
Yes. Come to my castle, all of you. We'll have a feast.
And then he invites all the dwarves to their wedding.
Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?
Snow White.
The magic mirror curses the queen so that she can never see her reflection ever again, and she freaks out, falls down, and I think dies? God God, I love this show. There are exactly 4 million cartoon versions of Snow White other than the Disney one, but since this video is already long enough, I chose the shitty one from Goodtimes Home Video.
She was a wicked and cruel woman who was only happy when she was looking into one of her many mirrors.
It is not the worst movie they have ever made. If you don't know, they just made like shitty ripoffs all throughout the 90s. Some highlights of this particular version of Snow White include the huntsman crying in place after Snow White leaves.
Now quickly, you must go and never return.
The prince looking like the little lad that loves berries and cream.
Whoa there! Wait a minute, miss. You are the most lovely creature this forest has ever seen. Never have I felt like this. Truly, I think this must be love.
The dwarves being canonically identical septuplets, so that they don't have to use more than one model for any of them because this company was so cheap.
Now, what Snow White could not possibly know was that this house did not belong to children at all, but to dwarves, 7 of them, identical and all brothers.
Snow scolding the dwarves for yelling at her when she broke into their house.
But she's sleeping in my bed!
Didn't anyone tell you that it's rude to wake someone up by yelling?
This dwarf telling her her name is weird when his name is literally Hedgehog.
I'm Snow White.
True, you are a bit pale, dearie, but what's your name? Kind of an unusual name, isn't it?
You can call me Hedgehog.
The queen dressing in drag to poison Snow White.
Excellent! No one could see through this disguise.
Are you all right, sir?
Please, miss, could an old man trouble you for a drink of water?
Is this what Republicans think happens at all those little reading circles that are delightful? They're always so mad about them.
Here, let me show you how it works.
The prince and the queen both calling each other Your Highness.
Your Highness.
You are far from your own kingdom, Your Highness.
And the prince saying he's gonna kill himself if he doesn't find Snow White?
What shall you do if you fail to find her? Or if, when you do, she is... Oh, I don't know. How shall I put this delicately? Dead?
Then I shall die as well.
You okay, buddy?
Surely you cannot be serious.
I have never been more serious. Either I shall find my love, or I shall die trying.
The dwarves crashing out when Snow White gets poisoned.
This is good. Maybe I will.
Her comb! Take out her comb!
What comb? There is no comb.
Then the laces! Cut loose her laces!
There are no laces! Okay, let's go. Someone get something.
I can't believe it.
The prince's helper giving him the look when he tells them to take a dead girl back to the castle.
May I take her with me?
What? No, never!
Please, I beg of you. If her life is over, then so is mine. Take care with her. She is the love of my life, and you must treat her gently.
His reaction to her waking up.
Where am I?
In the arms of the man who would be your husband, my love.
And the queen getting dragged into the shadow realm.
Your wicked face no more to see. You'll stay here for eternity. So welcome to my special place, and nevermore you'll see your face.
In the 90s, 2000s, and 2010s, there were several attempts made to make Snow White modern. It was decided at some point that Snow White was boring, and so we needed the kids to like her again. So they tried to make Snow White cool, tried to make her scary, tried to make her funny, which kind of cooked, from what I remember. The one that was arguably most successful was Snow in Once Upon a Time. By the way, I haven't forgotten that I used to talk about Once Upon a Time. I've just had other things going on. Once Upon a Time was a show that let Snow White be a mother that was also a trained fighter. She was a hero who was incredibly self-sufficient, but also incredibly kind and generous and caring of those around her. And whichever version you prefer, it's important to remember that live-action Snow White has already been done before. It's been done to death, actually. And that's very important as we finally come to the part of the video you probably all came here looking forward to the most. I don't know if you can hear the rain, but it is a dark and stormy night here in Atlanta, guys. As I'm recording this video, the Snow White live-action remake from Disney is the internet's favorite movie to hate right now. Everyone is reveling in how hard it's tanking at the box office. And some of that is because we've hated those live-action remakes for over a decade now. Did you know that they've made 20 of those things? How the fuck is that possible? But so far, they've been financially viable, since capitalism doesn't care if you're paying because you hate it. It just wants to take your money. I don't know if you guys want like a giant video about every terrible live-action Disney remake, but let me know because I have thoughts on the live-action Disney remakes. I probably need to talk about them sometime soon. But that financial viability has spun out with Snow White, and it's currently being estimated that the movie could lose more than $100 million. I guess they don't want Elon Musk to feel lonely. Their investors want to lose a bunch of money too. This movie has been angering people online since it was in pre-production, and while it's not really the main focus of this video, I know if I don't at least briefly touch on some of the controversies, everyone will just tell me I should have in the comments. But let's do that so then we can talk about the movie separate from the people making it and see how it compares to the original. Controversy number 1, Snow White isn't white. Rachel Zegler is Latina, and even though she looks so much like Snow White, conservatives are mad that she isn't white. This is a stupid thing to be mad about. Like, don't get me wrong, Disney isn't doing this for genuine reasons of inclusivity. They want a pat on the back for doing the bare minimum to provide good representation when they can't even be bothered to give Latina girls an official princess. Like, we haven't had a Hispanic princess, a Latina princess. We don't have one of those. Like, not in the official canon. Saying that she doesn't look the part of Snow White because she isn't Caucasian is silly because lots of non-Caucasian people are very fair-skinned. The 2001 film Snow White, the Fairest of Them All had an Asian Snow White, and not only did no one get mad, no one remembers that movie. We can talk about her performance, but the idea that Snow White is reserved for white ladies is dumb in my opinion. I think she looks perfectly like Snow White. Controversy number 2, Rachel Zegler isn't the best at interviews. I ran out of my lemonade. Rachel, who is fairly new to the spotlight, having only been discovered a few years ago by Steven Spielberg when he cast her in West Side Story, was not a child star and can be unfiltered when talking to the press due to a lack of media training. In my previous video about Nikki Blonsky last week, I said that famous people shouldn't talk to the media nowadays without media training. And a couple of people suggested that this was because I want everyone to be boring red carpet robots. I did my best to explain my point in that video, but since we have another opportunity to talk about it, let me try again to clarify. I often find myself wishing that we lived in a less reactive time. Some people log onto the internet, see something without much context, have a knee-jerk reaction, and immortalize that quickly found opinion in their digital footprint. To be clear, this is not talking about people being angry about genuine things that need to be addressed. But if people are in the spotlight and want to hold up to this level of scrutiny that is developed on social media, they have to learn a certain level of poise and constantly prep what they say to reporters who want the public reaction and are incentivized given this new system to take things out of context. I'm not saying all reporters do that, I'm just saying some outlets are less scrupulous. Social media users also have a reason to remove context because confusion and strong emotion leads to more likes and shares and bigger number better person in this age of social media clout. And here's the thing, in the climate that we've created, I don't think we can also ask people to publicly be more vulnerable and feel owed that part of them if we don't correct our culture to be a little bit more chill, just a little bit, like this much more chill. Like, if someone does or says something actually harmful, we all should call that out. But like, I'm talking about, I see people get clipped out of context in interviews all the time, and then that little clip goes viral without the context and it's a whole thing, or a paparazzi gets a picture on a movie set where two actors are playing love interests and then it gets posted without context and people think those actors are cheating on their actual significant others. Even though it's so dumb, like, you can see like the fact that it is a movie set in like half the pictures. Or like a clip of somebody on stage performing blows up and people share it around before they even know what's going on and just think that they're out here in the wild being weird instead of taking like 2 seconds to look at the comments and figure out that it's a whole rehearsed show with characters and consent from all parties involved. And look, I'm gonna assume these are children out of courtesy. But like, sorry for going on a tangent. People just need to think critically before they come out here on Markiplier's internet. Sometimes it drives me crazy. It's like my biggest pet peeve. Do yourself the favor and just look into something before you post about it. Anyway, that brings us back to Rachel Zegler, who was cast for this part at like 20 years old and gave a flurry of interviews where she expressed surface-level criticism of the original Disney film.
You said you were bringing a modern edge to it on stage. What do you mean by that?
I just mean that it's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White that is
not going to be saved by the prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be.
Now, do I think these are fresh, nuanced takes? No. In fact, the main thing that makes me roll my eyes is that this is something straight out of 2013 BuzzFeed faux feminism. I mean, lots of people have said this. She's not alone in this opinion. I've heard it a million times. I might have had this opinion back in the day. And she's, again, like 20. We've all had cringe takes at 20 years old. I'm pretty sure that when I was 20, I probably tweeted something about Hillary Clinton being this rebel leftist girl who was gonna save America. Like, okay, girly, women can do war crimes too. We get it. But this notion that Snow White is just about being saved by a man, or that it's inherently bad for girls to want to find love when literally everyone wants that, in one form or another, it isn't a particularly academic take. It doesn't account for context of the original film, social standards of the period, fairy tale logic not being a substitute for the real world. But I'm sorry, acting like this random actress saying something that used to be a meme has ruined your day is a little dramatic. And I get that if you're trying to sell a remake, maybe don't make the original fan base feel dumb for liking the original thing you're remaking. It's giving Velma vibes, right? Like, I'm making this new thing just to make fun of your old thing and you for liking the old thing. I can totally see how Snow White fans could be offended by that. It's like when people would say that Beauty and the Beast is about a woman with Stockholm Syndrome, or The Little Mermaid changed everything about herself for a guy. It is a lazy criticism, and eventually it does start to feel like we make art specifically to appeal to women and base it off of societal expectations of women at the time. And then when women find comfort in some of that art, everyone just tries to take it away from us and make us feel bad about liking it. I felt that too, but this is definitely a talking point that was given to Rachel by Disney, and I don't even think you're mad at Rachel. I think you just want to talk to a real person and not a screen for once. Like, the internet makes us feel like every tiny little thing is a disaster. It's not. And if you start feeling stressed out to this extent by stuff that you see online, just log off for a little bit. Controversy number 3, Rachel has opinions. This one is also dumb. Rachel said fuck Donald Trump, and conservatives got mad.
May Trump supporters and Trump himself never know peace.
Yeah.
What the F? She attacked Twitter and Elon and finished with fuck Donald Trump.
Oh, man.
Hello, Disney. You're going to have to redo your film again because this woman is a pig and you fired Gina Carano for far less than this nonsense.
Who cares? I'll say it. Fuck Donald Trump. Fuck Elon Musk. Fuck JD Vance and the couch he rode in on. What are you gonna do? Tell my mom? She'll kick your ass. Rachel also said free Palestine, which I respect the hell out of her for that. Free Palestine, especially since her older, more established co-star is supportive of the genocide. Free Palestine. Controversy 4, Gal Gadot supports genocide. This is the first valid criticism on the list. Gal Gadot constantly speaks in support of and makes excuses for the actions of the Israeli government.
And then October 7th happened. Never did I imagine that we would witness such a day of such death and destruction of Jews in our lifetime. And never did I imagine that on the streets of the United States and different cities around the world, we would see people not condemning Hamas, but celebrating, justifying, and cheering on a massacre of Jews.
And some people try to make this out like people hate her because she is Israeli, and it's like, absolutely not. People are mad at her because she thinks Israel should get to do a genocide. And it's not like she drew people's attention to the fact that the Israeli government is also endangering their own people with a needless war. No, she's just perpetuating anti-Palestinian propaganda. This made so many people mad that when she recently received her star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, the ceremony was disrupted by protesters, which good for those protesters. This led many to believe that she and Rachel hated each other, and honestly, I kind of see where they're coming from, not only because they have wildly different political views, but not to speculate, but like they do seem like they do not want to look at each other in interviews. Controversy 5, the Seven Dwarves. I can't say I personally have an opinion on this one since it's directly speaking about a minority group that I'm not a part of, so I'm just a messenger here. I also did my best to keep this timeline straight, but it was a little hard due to the amount of rumors flying around to parse through facts and keep dates in order. After Disney casted Latina Snow White, actor Peter Dinklage went on a podcast where he criticized Disney for revisiting a story about dwarves in the first place.
You're progressive in one way, but you're still making that fucking backward story of 7 dwarves living in a cave. What the are you doing, man?
After this statement made headlines, Disney seemed to cast 6 average height actors and 1 little person actor to make up the 7 dwarves. During and after this apparent casting decision, several other members of the little person community disagreed with Dinklage publicly, saying that this is a major opportunity for representation and no one should be discouraging Disney from hiring actors with dwarfism for those roles.
The issue at hand is, by saying this, he's doing something worse for the dwarf and the little people community. He's trying to take roles away.
Perhaps due to the belief that this was a PR controversy either way, Disney then pulled the plug on the 7 dwarves being played by live actors at all, and instead made them these uncanny valley sleep paralysis demons that everyone hated, and actually sparked protests on behalf of the little person community over exclusion. And in the end, only one of the 7 dwarves was actually voiced by an actor who is a little person. And yeah, I think that's the bulk of the controversies. Just a little bit of everything that somehow made everyone mad at the same time. Can I please watch the damn movie now? Apologies in advance. I don't know how many clips I'll actually be able to put in of the new Snow White. It is still in theaters. For now. This time I have green tea. Old Snow White starts with beautifully hand-done art and tells us immediately who Snow White is and what her situation is like. We see her caring for animals and working hard as she sings a beautiful song about the hope that she has that the future will be better for her. No, she's not wielding a sword or speaking her mind, but she has hope. And to quote the Tale of Despero, whenever you have hope, you're never really anybody's prisoner. The singing is classical, and you can hear the emotion in her voice. New Snow White starts by explaining that in this version, Snow is named after the blizzard she was born in. Once Upon a Time did that too. I don't mind that. I actually think it's more meaningful than naming her for the color of her skin. I also feel represented because I was actually born in the middle of a blizzard too, so winter girlies represent. The opening song shows us a young Snow being taught by her parents that she's meant to lead, and young Snow is like, 2 seconds ago I was picking apples. There's already so much CGI, and it looks horrible. And also the singing is so auto-tuned.
Upon this land, on the home we come to know.
And in all of this, we don't really get to learn about Snow. We learn about who her parents are, and who they want her to be, and how their kingdom runs, and it seems like a cool place. But Snow is just this random girl with no discernible traits to invest us in her character. And she doesn't even really believe in the wishing well. I don't know why. Because this choice, I think it's just supposed to make her seem more practical, but it really just makes her seem so unimaginative because as we're going to learn, magic is very real in this universe. Old Snow White illustrates the evil queen's ominous nature in this wordless shot that always terrified me as a kid. Snow is in rags, but she's in the sun, surrounded by life. Meanwhile, the evil queen stalks her from above, showing her to have vantage point and power over her in film language, and is dressed in expensive clothes and jewelry, but she's hiding away in the dark and cold alone. Sorry, that's all film language nerd shit, but I wish new Snow White cared more about it because it just conveys so much without really having to say anything. New Snow White actually lacks most of this film shorthand, and it's just like, there's Gal. She's really pretty, but she also looked evil into this mirror that one time. We also learn that her beauty gives her magic, which I can't begin to describe how much that doesn't make sense to me.
And cared only about her own beauty and the power it granted.
Magic giving you beauty, a la Mother Gothel, that makes sense. But how does it work the other way around? This feels like Disney falling into the trap they always do with these remakes, where they overthink and then try to over-explain a plot point from the original that literally no one was asking about. Like, the Queen straight up just being vain and selfish is so much more straightforward. As far as motives go, it's very easy to grasp. But here we get this fuckery. Also, adding the king and queen back in for 5 minutes just to kill them like we all knew they were going to does nothing to further the plot, nor Snow White's emotional journey. I don't care about these people. I don't have any emotional connection to them, and I don't really have an emotional reaction to them dying either. And honestly, neither does Snow White. She just kind of moves on. Old Snow White is actively wishing out loud for love when the prince hears her singing and shoots his shot, which is so old-fashioned, but honestly very wholesome in a weird way. Also, I like that it implies that the wishing well is magic, but also she's just, you know, putting herself out there too. It gives her more autonomy than the new Snow White has, honestly. Like, he doesn't know that she's the princess. Why would he? She's cleaning up bird poop in a potato sack. But ever since I was a little kid, I thought it was cute how he just seemed so excited to meet her and was very polite all around.
Oh!
Hello.
Oh!
Did I frighten you? Wait, please.
He's just like, God damn, she's pretty. We say that Disney princes gave us unrealistic expectations for love, but we should teach little girls that if a guy isn't vault over the garden wall levels of excited to spend time with you, that you can do better. This prince doesn't have much of a personality and barely gets any screen time, but he's polite and makes Snow smile, so it's just a very cute moment, or at least I always thought. New Snow White meets her prince in a way less romantic way. He's like this rebel type, which is cool. But she catches him stealing food and seems frightened before he victim blames her, not knowing who she is. But he tells her the princess should be doing more for her people, meanwhile she's literally being abused and held captive. She then tells her bird friends that the queen must not know how bad things are out there for their subjects, which...
I'm sure if the queen was aware of how desperate things have gotten, she would be happy to share.
She cut off all your hair and stuck you in the dungeons, girlie. Where's all this blind faith coming from at this stage of the game? They did this in the Cinderella remake too, where in trying to make her more headstrong, they just made her look weak. Which is a shame because Cinderella, just like Snow White, is actually a story about a girl in an abusive home. And I just wish we talked about that more. Like, if we're gonna, like, modernize or try to make this story grittier, let's talk about it as an abuse survival story. She tries to save her prince when he gets arrested, but ends up making things way worse for him.
Remove his coat and boots and bind him to the gates to freeze.
You know, is the dungeon still an option?
Take him away!
And the queen gives her this long lecture about power that every other villain gives, and oh my god, Gal Gadot is a bad actor. I'm not saying that because she supports genocide. I'm saying that because she's a bad actor.
This thief stole from me, so I will steal from him.
I'm saying that because she seems so bored with this character. And now I'm bored. Good grief. Snow sings a whole song about needing a wish to be the person she's supposed to be, which not only is a nothing song that sounds like it was AI written to be covered by a pop star, but she's already stood up to the queen. What do you mean she lacks courage? She's already shown a lot of courage. And this isn't like something that gets touched on, like she can't see her own courage. Like they just don't lay this angle out very well. It's just very confusing. Anyway, she frees the prince. I know he's not a prince, but I don't know what else to call him. And he tells her she's brave and she's like, nah, and then keeps singing.
I'm still waiting here.
It almost feels like parody. Standing in the center and somebody's gonna be mad. Old Snow White had the queen ask the mirror who was prettiest, and when he said Snow, she simply wanted to kill her. It was not that deep, and no one wanted it to be that deep. New Snow White has this convoluted new plot line where beauty gives power, but now also beauty is equated to power. Like, I don't know how else to describe it, but the mirror implies that Snow is now the fairest directly because she's gaining a sense of autonomy.
Awakened to the world, nothing can hide her gentle grace.
But this makes no sense to me, because if you're saying the mirror judges beauty in kindness, then the mirror would have never answered the queen's name. And if he's judging it in power, he'd still be saying the queen's name because she's still the queen. Snow doesn't outrank her because she sang at a gate one time. We're 20 minutes in and we've already lost the plot. The queen is also so whiny. Like, OG Queen was a bitch, but she was also a boss, you know? Old Snow White and New Snow White have very similar huntsman scenes. The new one still focuses on how kind she is and how that's what makes the huntsman spare her. Only now we have this added tidbit about how the queen lied about how the king died.
What about my father?
It's like supposed to be intriguing, I think. But we all know Girly killed that guy. Also, can I agree with everyone and say that the dress is awful? They didn't redesign it much. It looks like a costume from Spirit Halloween. It's not in flattering colors to complement Rachel's natural color theory, I guess. I don't know what the right word is. Also, the hair, people are saying gives Lord Farquaad, and I kinda see it. They did her really dirty. Old Snow White had that classic scene where she's running through the dark wood and every tree looks like a monster in her frightened state until she collapses crying and talks herself down in front of a bunch of woodland creatures that we're not expecting to see a woman crash out today, but here they are. I guess I like the running sequence of the new Snow White from like an aesthetic level, but it's all CGI and shows the forest as somewhat actually malicious, which doesn't allow her to have any kind of moment of self-reflection or emotional maturity while realizing that it's all up to her, how she responds to what the world throws at her. Making her actually be subjected to her surroundings that want to kill her for some reason feels hollow in comparison to that. The animals also look bad. I don't know how they made little bunnies and deer look bad, but Enchanted made an adorable CGI Pip back in 2007, and there's just no excuses for this. But the worst CGI is right around the corner. Holy God, the dwarves look bad. I've had sleep paralysis demons that I trusted more than these uncanny valley abominations. Bashful looks like Shane Dawson, and Dopey looks like the kid from Insidious, and I genuinely don't know which of those things is more terrifying. Also, Hi-Ho didn't need to be an entire musical number, but it sure was one. The meeting of Snow and the Seven Dwarves isn't really different from the original in any meaningful way. I mean, other than the horrors. Old Snow White had the evil queen find out that she'd been fooled with the heart of a pig before she ominously implies that she's gonna execute the huntsman. And that's chilling. New Snow White has her check the box that the heart is supposedly in, only to find that it's an apple, implying not only that she didn't check until that moment, but also that the huntsman wasn't even trying to get away with it. She then has an upbeat musical number about how she's gonna kill the huntsman.
You let me down, 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 down. In the dungeon you stay.
Gaslight, gatekeep, guillotine, I guess.
It's gonna be me.
It's gonna be me.
This is so ridiculous. I can't even. The choreography is also so bad. This Nancy Pelosi-fication of the evil queen is a travesty to behold. Also, this sounds like a nitpick, but I edit for a living. What the hell was that cut? Y'all can't cut on the motion? We just have an instant replay? I miss when Gal Gadot's biggest singing-related crime was that cringy Imagine cover during the pandemic that she, like, dragged all of her friends into.
Imagine there's no heaven.
This is the bad place.
We then get the most performative activism Disney may have ever done, and that's saying something.
You know Dopey doesn't talk, because he's a dope. Just because his name is Dopey doesn't mean he's actually a dope.
This is something I would have jokingly said half-heartedly, maybe, but they're fully trying to, like, have a learning moment. Like, anyone was actually mad that they call him Dopey. That's his name. Are you making fun of his name, Disney? Snow teaches Dopey to whistle, because he can't speak. And then Grumpy and Sneezy are fighting again, so she makes them get along by cleaning, giving us whistle while you work. Look, I agree that the dwarves need to help out around the cottage a little bit more, but this is so obviously pandering, and women know and actively hate when you're pandering to them. Companies start trying to sell us things by like this insidious fake activism on our part from like the time we're babies. We hate it. Also, this whole scene is just, the vibe is giving homeschool mom does forced family fun. We then get this moment.
They're actually a band of erstwhile actors whose sustenance was made unstable by the Queen's greedy economic policy, which forced them into a liminal space where ethics and motives are ill-defined.
Which is particularly bad, coming from Disney of all companies, but also keep in mind that this movie's production was halted by the SAG strikes. Classy, Disney. Apparently Snow's dad is still alive, so the dwarves point her in the direction of information, and she sets out on her own. This is clearly meant to make her seem more independent, but it's weirdly sad to me. The original dwarves served as a found family for Snow. They gave her support and love and things she didn't get in her own upbringing. I don't love the message that strong women have to go it alone to prove a point. Men never get told that they can't have love and emotional development. In fact, men often get told that they have to have love to have emotional development. She doesn't even get to go on the adventure independently because she immediately, and I mean immediately, runs into the prince adjacent guy. He's the prince adjacent guy who saves her life. And so now we're leaving behind this platonic found family love story to focus on a boring enemies to lovers love story that I read more interesting versions of on AO3 back in the day. This prince parallel keeps egging her on about how she's a spoiled princess, and like, she literally saved your life, dude. She did almost get you killed, but she stuck the landing in the end. Then she meets the merry band of thieves this guy hangs out with. And okay, they're the actors that were rumored to be playing the dwarves in original articles that came out while they were in production. And on one hand, online speculation is almost never helpful early on in a movie's development to help you figure out what's going on. Ask any Marvel fan. The supposed inside sources are charmingly always bullshit. So maybe this was always the plan and they were never the dwarves, but hear me out. There are 7 of them. So I think that either A, these guys were supposed to be an analog for the 7 dwarves. And by the way, I guess that makes Johnny the fake prince Stealthy the 8th dwarf. If you know, you know. Or these were supposed to be the actual dwarves before the internet got mad and then rewrites were done. And they just kind of inserted the dwarves in. Because a lot of the dwarves scenes do feel somewhat disconnected from the rest of what's going on in the story. I don't know. I just find it interesting that they released set photos of 7 actors on the set of Snow White. And those 7 actors were not the 7 dwarves. Johnny creates a diversion for Snow, which is totally fine, but they did make a big deal out of her not being saved by a prince, and now he saved her twice. Then she creates her own diversion by what I thought was her ditching her dress, but then she still has her dress, so what happened here? I'm genuinely confused. The prince then takes an arrow for her, so that's rescue number 3. And now we're all back at the 7 Dwarves cottage, making me even more confused about what the second set of 7 sidekicks is for. Then they have a fake out where Doc is like, unfortunately, after trying everything I could, Johnny's fine.
They did the best that they could, and she is going to be okay.
What is wrong with you?
He then makes it really awkward.
I would do anything for Snow White's special friend.
And then they all dance. Johnny's friend wingmans for him, and then Snow sings about being in love with him. I appreciate that they're trying to establish an actual relationship between them to motivate the fact that true love's kiss has to factor into this somewhere. But I think in trying to make Snow's story less centered around a man, they've made it more so. Like, let's take the scene we're currently in as an example. What did Disney actually change here? In the original, this scene showcases Snow White having essentially a cozy family night with her platonic older brother friends who took her in. She's having fun and dancing and getting to be in a relative safe space after years of captivity. And in the end, she sings a song about dreaming of finding a romantic love someday. And it's clear that she's thinking about the cute boy she saw before, but I always took it as she doesn't really think she's gonna see him again, and is just fantasizing about building a life in peace one day. In this new version, she's basically at a random block party with a bunch of strangers, sitting off to the side over a guy that she just met, and letting it consume her thoughts. I mean, haven't we all been there? But the second supposedly modern scenario feels less healthy and less centered on Snow White. It's no longer about her personal dreams. And by the way, for the girls that need to hear this today, wanting to be loved does not make you weak. It's now this scene about this new guy, which isn't what I would call a problem, but if you're gonna have this marketing angle, that this is a more feminist retelling of the outdated gender norms of the problematic 1930s version, I feel like you could have done better than this, in my personal opinion, Disney. Also, since they did so little to familiarize us with who these characters are on a deeper level, I'm no more invested in their relationship than I was with the OGs. They also both sing the line, "Wake me with a kiss," and I get that we're trying to establish consent, and that's good. Consent, good. I shouldn't have to say that. That is just a thing. Consent is a good thing. But this is so heavy-handed. After all this, Johnny gets captured again and taken to the evil queen again, and Snow gave him her necklace, and so the queen is able to figure out where Snow is from this interaction, and like, she has a magic mirror. And a bunch of magic that comes from her being hot. Why did she need to find Snow White through Johnny? Why is the evil queen doing old-fashioned detective work? What wave of feminism is this supposed to be? She then goes to her evil villain lair and makes herself look old, and when I tell you the face morph effect they used triggered my fight or flight response, I don't like it. It's a shame because the aesthetic of the lair scene and even the haunted forest scene kind of give you these what-if glances into what might have been. Like, if they made this movie 20 years ago before Twitter and excessive CGI, they may have cooked, but I suppose we'll never know. Snow White is deciding to go after her father, even though Jonathan already went after her father for her, and alas, the queen shows up. Obviously, she's in disguise, but she tells Snow that Johnny got captured, and she doesn't believe her, which is weird because she's already seen him get captured. She knows Johnny's kind of a mark-ass bitch. Why is she surprised? Anyway, under the guise of helping her find Johnny, she gives her the apple. This is to try and make her seem less naive by motivating her acceptance of the apple by a want to protect her loved ones. And it's not the worst idea, but better versions of this take have already been done, namely by Once Upon a Time, where Snow knows she's getting poisoned but agrees to it in an attempt to bargain for the life of her prince and also the lives of her friends. But yeah, she eats the apple, dies, and then the dwarves cry their creepy Polar Express core tears. Oh, and also the evil queen told her before she died that her dad is actually dead, so bummer. I called that, and I do not know why this plotline existed if it wasn't ever gonna go anywhere. I think she's supposedly, learning that she can't, wait on anybody else to save her, but that's all that's been happening. Johnny is in jail with the huntsman, and they team up to break out for Snow White, who Johnny says fought with us, but honestly, what has Snow White done to affect the plot? Not a whole lot. Things just kind of happened to her. That was true in the original too, but at least then it was motivated by her main goal just being to stay in hiding away from the evil queen. This woman is supposedly a prodigy of leadership. Why won't she do anything? Johnny gets back to find Snow dead, and I genuinely thought they were gonna do a less effective version of what Enchanted rocked, which was the kiss not working, but no. He kisses her, she wakes up, and it's pretty anticlimactic, actually. This is wild to me because they made poor Rachel take the hit for what was surely a Disney-penned talking point about how it's not going to be about her being saved by a guy.
She's not going to be saved by the prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love.
About how it's creepy that this guy kissed her after she had died. But I want to point out, regardless of how you personally feel about the true love's kiss thing, this guy had the same amount of consent as the other guy. In both versions, she loved the love interest, and that allowed him to wake her up with a kiss and save her life, I guess. And it's not even like he was trying to save her in this one because he was surprised that it worked. He was like, damn, she's up now, I guess. I'm not saying I'm personally offended by the kiss. I just know some people tweet about being offended, and Disney wants those people specifically to like this version, and I don't really see a difference. I mean, yeah, they updated their dynamic to make it more familiar to modern audiences. But people forget that the 1930s one was also an update for its cultural norms. From the original one from the 1800s, where the prince has never met her before and checks notes, just wants to put her dead body on display because she's so pretty? Huh. Disney made a decision to update it so that she meets the prince and has a connection. It's old-fashioned now, but in a pre-dating world, that was their version of conveying that Snow gave consent, I think. And I'm not saying we can't update it or do better now, but apparently Disney doesn't have that many ideas because, again, no matter how you feel about it, nothing really changed in this new version. But then Snow remembers suddenly that she's supposed to be a leader, so she plans to lead her new friends and boyfriend into battle.
We're not afraid. Not anymore.
Dopey starts talking, which, first of all, I saw this coming a mile away. Second of all, seeing Dopey speak is a new kind of cursed. And thirdly, this is supposed to be uplifting, but is it? This is a genuine question on my part for people who have struggled with selective mutism. As a child, I was never diagnosed with it, but I was extremely anxious and struggled to verbalize in a lot of social situations when I was young. I do not know if that's the same thing, and I'm not trying to be out here self-diagnosing on the internet. But I feel like this is important to bring up because it's the reason I'm so interested in this choice. I don't know if as a child I would have felt particularly empowered by this scene. Maybe I would have, but maybe I would have felt like not speaking was my fault for not getting over it because of the way it's framed here. I don't know. And I just find that very curious. If anyone has any actual experience with selective mutism, feel free to weigh in. I don't know, I found that interesting. Snow shows up at the palace gates, and the townspeople see her and all join her in marching for freedom, including this girl that was her friend in the opening number. The fact that this is the most emotionally touching moment in the whole movie really shows how shallow and plasticky it feels. I know plasticky isn't a word, but it is now because I said it. This red hood looks so much better on her than the dress. It is much more her color, I think. She confronts the evil queen in front of everybody, where they low-key have a political debate about who would be a better leader, and you cannot tell me that this is more of a payoff than the evil queen getting got by a boulder in the original. The evil queen offers Snow a dagger to kill her with, but she won't take it because being passive is kind of her thing. And then the queen orders her to be killed with the same dagger. But then Snow addresses each of the, guards by name, like a disappointed mother, and reminds them of who they were before the queen basically drafted them. And then just immediately they're like, oh yeah, we are good guys. It's giving I'm Radio Rebel vibes.
I'm Radio Rebel!
No, I'm Radio Rebel.
No, I'm Radio Rebel! Woo!
The evil queen tries to kill Snow herself, but then Snow gets saved again by one of Johnny's friends. Hey, remember them? And then Snow tries to gently exile the evil queen, and she's like, no, and she runs back into the castle. Or I don't know how she got past all the guards and also all 7 of the dwarves blocking her path, but honestly, whatever at this point, I don't care. She runs to the magic mirror, who has a mini speech about beauty coming from within, which is annoying because to anyone with media literacy, this is always what Snow White has been about. I hate that we're so comfortable dumbing things down currently. Anyway, the evil queen breaks the magic mirror and then disintegrates, and the mirror fixes itself, and then Snow sees herself in it. And in the end, Snow restores her kingdom, the narrator is revealed to be Dopey, and everyone is dressed in all white like it's a cult, but they seem happy, so yay, the end. While the original has stood the test of time as one of the most influential movies made, this one is such a mess. It's hollow and lifeless, and whether the original is a personal favorite of yours or not, you can't deny that it had a lot of heart and artistry poured into it by people who seem to genuinely care about it. And this is just a disgraceful cash grab from a company who was once known for pouring their soul into family entertainment, and now it's just a greedy shell of what it used to be. Snow White may not be the most progressive story, but it's a fairly simple little fairy tale that doesn't really need to be much more than what it already is. It's full of simple concepts of love and kindness, and while I would love to see a self-sufficient Snow White who's also just as kind and gentle and forgiving as before, we already got that in Once Upon a Time, by the way, but I don't think we got that in this version. This movie was quite possibly one of the worst I've seen, and if you've been watching this channel for a while, you know what a statement that truly is. I'm glad the movie's bombing at the box office, personally. I think it's time we stopped allowing corporations to get away with making lazy remakes that have no interest in its themes or its audience. I think we deserve better. I think children deserve better, and I think they deserve to be taught to be critical of what they see. If you've made it this far, firstly, thank you for being here. That truly means a lot to me. But also, I'd like to challenge you to make something beautiful today. It can be anything you want, but as long as it has meaning, it's art. And that is truly beautiful to me. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching, liking, commenting, subscribing, sharing. Everything you do to support this channel means the world to me. If you're new here and you're a fan of nonsense, maybe consider sticking around. I post nonsense all the time, but remember, my name is Avery. I'm a YouTuber if you say so, because thanks to you guys, this is technically a YouTube channel. Bye, everybody.
Bye, Grump.